Steelers Nation, stop everything you're doing right now because what's happening in Pittsburgh is absolutely massive. We've got a young defensive star breaking his silence on his new contract, a championship drought that's about to end, and a quarterback situation so bold it might just rewrite the NFL playbook. If you want to stay locked in on every single development coming out of the Steel City, you better smash that subscribe button right now because this channel is your daily dose of black and gold truth. Let's dive in. So here's where things get incredibly exciting. Nick Herbig just sat down for an interview, and let me tell you, this young man is not holding back. Coming off what many are calling a breakout season, Herbig is making it crystal clear that he's not satisfied being just a rotational piece anymore. He's hungry, he's motivated, and more importantly, he's ready to step into a leadership role that this franchise desperately needs on the defensive side of the ball. Now let me give you some context here for those who might not know the full story. Nick Herbig was drafted by the Steelers and immediately found himself in one of the most talented linebacker rooms in the entire National Football League. You've got TJ Watt, a former Defensive Player of the Year and arguably the most dominant edge rusher in football. You've got Alex Highsmith, who's become one of the most underrated pass rushers in the game. So for a young guy coming in, you're not just walking into any situation. You're walking into a masterclass every single day. But here's what separates good players from great ones. Herbig didn't complain about playing time. He didn't pout about being a rotational guy. He didn't demand a trade or leak frustration to the media. Instead, he did something that Steelers fans have come to respect and expect from their players. He stayed ready, he watched, he learned, and when his number was called, he absolutely delivered. Think about this for a second. Herbig was only on the field for about 60% of the defensive snaps last season. 60%. That means he wasn't even out there for close to half the game. And yet, despite limited opportunities, he still managed to produce at such a high level that the Steelers saw fit to give him a new contract. That tells you everything you need to know about the talent we're talking about here. This isn't some guy who got lucky with a few sacks in garbage time. This is a legitimate ascending player who maximized every single rep he got. And now, heading into this offseason, Herbig is making it clear that he's working on more than just his pass rush moves. He's expanding his entire approach to the game. He talked about becoming more vocal, stepping into a leadership role, and doing whatever new head coach Mike McCarthy asks of him. That's the mentality that wins championships, Steelers Nation. That's the mentality that built the dynasty we all remember. But here's where Herbig's comments really hit home. He didn't sugarcoat the situation in Pittsburgh. He straight up said the Steelers have been in a drought. And he's absolutely right. Let's talk about that for a moment because it's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to fully acknowledge but everyone knows is there. The last time the Pittsburgh Steelers won a playoff game was all the way back in January of 2016. Let that sink in. 2016, that's 8 years ago. For a franchise that built its identity on championships, on Lombardi trophies, on being the standard of excellence in the NFL, that's unacceptable. And Herbig knows it. He said Pittsburgh is known for those rings, known for that Lombardi trophy, and they need to get back to it. That's a young player understanding the weight of the black and gold jersey he's wearing. So what's different this time? Why should Steelers fans believe that this drought is actually going to end? Well, Herbig gave us some real insight into that. He talked about the new coaching staff, the new defensive coordinator Patrick Graham, and the absolute necessity for every single player to buy into the system. He said it perfectly. You can't have 5 guys doing their own thing and 6 guys doing something else. All 11 players on the field need to be a cohesive unit. And when they achieve that, Herbig believes they'll be unstoppable. That's not just young player optimism talking. That's a guy who's seen the talent in that locker room. He's practiced against the offense. He's worked alongside some of the best defenders in football. He knows what this team is capable of when everyone is locked in and playing together. And under a new regime with Mike McCarthy calling the shots and Patrick Graham installing a fresh defensive scheme, there's legitimate reason to believe this could be the year everything clicks. Now let's talk about something that makes Herbig's story even more fascinating. The arm length debate. If you followed the draft process at all over the past few years, you've heard analysts obsess over measurements: hand size, arm length, wingspan, all of it. And for edge rushers specifically, arm length has become this weird measuring stick that some teams use to determine whether a guy can be successful on the edge or not. Well, guess what? Nick Herbig doesn't have the prototypical long arms that scouts drool over. And coming into the NFL, that actually created doubt. Herbig himself admitted that he wasn't even sure he was going to play edge rusher at the professional level. All of his pre-draft meetings were focused on inside linebacker. But here's the beautiful part of the story. Herbig knew he had it in him. He knew he could rush the passer from the edge, and a veteran named Marcus Golden encouraged him, told him it didn't matter what the measurements said or what the doubters thought. The film speaks for itself. And man, has that film been loud. Herbig has gone out there and proven that you don't need 34-inch arms to be an effective pass rusher. You need technique. You need motor. You need football intelligence. You need heart. And Herbig has all of that in spades. So to all those doubters who said his arms were too short, to all those analysts who tried to box him into a different position, Herbig's message is simple: just prove them wrong, and that's exactly what he's doing. But it's not just physical tools that make Herbig special, it's the environment he's been developed in. He talked about having mentors like T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith paving the way for him. Can you imagine being a young pass rusher and getting to watch T.J. Watt work every single day? Getting to see how he prepares, how he studies film, how he sets up his moves, how he attacks offensive tackles. That's an education you can't get anywhere else. That's why the Steelers have been so good at developing defensive talent for decades. They create a culture where the young guys learn from the established stars, and everyone holds each other accountable. Herbig said it best: stay ready so when your opportunity comes, you're ready to capitalize. That's not just football advice. That's life advice. And it's a mentality that's going to serve him well as he steps into a bigger role this season. Now here's where things get really fun. Let's talk about the new defensive coordinator, Patrick Graham. If you haven't been paying attention to what Graham is doing in Pittsburgh, you're missing out. This guy isn't just installing a playbook. He's building a culture. He's educating his players not just on X's and O's, but on the history of the game, on the roots of the music that influences the locker room, on creating a well-rounded understanding of the world around them. Herbig mentioned that Graham has been giving the team hip-hop lessons. But it goes deeper than that. They've been studying Jimi Hendrix. They had rookies give full presentations on Jimi Hendrix's life, his music, his impact. Think about that for a second. A defensive coordinator making sure his players are culturally educated, making sure they understand history and art and music, all while installing a defensive scheme that's supposed to bring back the glory days of the Steel Curtain. That's the kind of innovative coaching that gets players bought in. That's the kind of leadership that creates a tight-knit unit. And when Herbig was asked what the defense is going to look like, he couldn't give away the sauce, but he did say there's going to be a lot of moving parts, a lot of new looks. Translation? The Steelers' defense is about to be unpredictable, multiple, and absolutely terrifying for opposing offenses. Patrick Graham has made no secret about his goal. He wants to bring back the Steel Curtain mentality. He wants a defense that suffocates offenses, that creates turnovers, that wins games. And with the talent Pittsburgh has on that side of the ball, there's no reason they can't do exactly that. The team chemistry is also off the charts right now. Herbig talked about a team outing to Kennywood, which is a famous amusement park and landmark here in Pittsburgh. And in classic Nick Herbig fashion, he won a basketball game at the carnival on his first try. He joked that in a different life, if he was a little bit taller, he'd be a hooper. But the point is, this team is bonding. They're spending time together outside of the facility. They're building relationships that translate to trust on the field. And that matters. Championship teams aren't just talented. They're connected. They believe in each other. They fight for each other. And everything we're seeing out of Pittsburgh this offseason suggests that this group is building exactly that kind of foundation. But now, Steelers Nation, let's shift gears because there's another story developing that's absolutely wild, the quarterback situation. And this is where things get really spicy. Word is starting to spread that the Steelers might actually carry 4 quarterbacks deep into the summer, maybe even into the regular season. 4 quarterbacks. Now, before you say that's insane, hear me out, because there's actual method to the madness. You've got Aaron Rodgers, obviously the big name, the headline, the guy who's supposed to elevate this offense to championship contention. Then, you've got Mason Rudolph, the veteran backup who's been in Pittsburgh, who knows the organization, who provides that emergency stability if something happens to Rodgers. Then there's Will Howard, the developmental prospect with real upside, a guy who could absolutely flash in the preseason and force some tough decisions. And finally, you've got Drew Aller, a long-term investment that the franchise isn't going to just throw away casually. So you've got 4 very different quarterbacks, 4 very different roles, and 4 very different reasons the Steelers might hesitate to cut any of them. And according to Jerry Dulac, a very plugged-in Steelers reporter, he's starting to think Pittsburgh actually could keep all 4, at least early in the season, depending on how camp and preseason play out. Now here's why this isn't as crazy as it sounds. The Steelers have been operating all offseason as if this is a legitimate possibility. Mike McCarthy said at minicamp that Rodgers would watch while Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, and Drew Aller all got reps in 2-minute situations. Official offseason photos showed all 4 quarterbacks on the field together during OTAs. This isn't just media speculation. This is the team actually giving serious developmental attention to all 4 guys. Think about what that means. The Steelers aren't just building a flimsy offense around Aaron Rodgers and hoping for magic. They're reinforcing the roster around him. They're creating work for the younger quarterbacks. They're giving reps, stretching evaluations, and refusing to rush a cut just because the outside world thinks 3 quarterbacks is the clean number. And honestly, after the instability this franchise has had at quarterback since Ben Roethlisberger retired, that's not weakness. That's discipline. That's smart team building. Because what happens if Rodgers gets hurt? What happens if the offense sputters? What happens if you need to make a change? You better have real options, not just warm bodies. This is where I think the Steelers are playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. They're refusing to pretend they already know the answer behind Rodgers. They're letting competition breathe. They're respecting Rudolph's experience. They're protecting Aller's future. And they're leaving room for Will Howard to force the issue if he balls out in August. That's messy, yes. It creates roster headaches. It creates tough decisions. But it's also the kind of headache good teams would rather have than the opposite. You want too much talent, not too little. You want tough choices, not obvious ones. And here's the kicker. Michael Pittman Jr. got a head start with Rodgers during OTAs after arriving earlier in the offseason than Rodgers did a year ago. The front office has spent this entire offseason showing it wants stronger infrastructure, not just one big name under center. That matters because if Rodgers misses time, the Steelers are trying to make sure the offense isn't built on one fragile thread. So, Steelers Nation, here's my take. The extremely bold move isn't just about keeping 4 quarterbacks. It's about the Steelers refusing to settle. It's about building depth, creating competition, and making sure they have every possible answer before they force a decision. With Nick Herbig ascending on defense, Patrick Graham installing a dynamic new scheme, and Mike McCarthy carefully managing a loaded quarterback room, this franchise is positioning itself for something special. If you had to choose today, would you keep the proven insurance in Mason Rudolph, or would you clear the runway for Will Howard if he lights up preseason? Drop your take in the comments, smash that like button, and make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you don't miss a single update as we march toward what could be the most exciting Steelers season in years. Let's go.